Got a question for the business of agriculture. Is the current round of trade war escalation and tariffs the 2025 version of the 1980 grain embargo? What am I talking about? I'm going to give you the historical perspective, but I'm going to start by giving you the current scenario. We know that right now I've got a president that's starting a trade war, and we've also got other countries that are not bowing, and all of a sudden we're into this situation where tariffs are being haggled and trade, and then there's going to be, we're not going to buy your stuff. China is obviously one of our main targets. They are not our number one ag customer anymore. They are our number 3 customer, dropping like a rock. They don't want to be our customer. Remember, I've told you that. They want to be our replacement economically and militarily, so they've set up South America to be their supplier. Number 1 customer for American ag, Mexico. Number 2, Canada. Number 3, China. The problem? We're starting a trade war with all 3 of them. Now, here's the thing. When I compare this, the 2025 trade war, to the 1980 grain embargo, what am I talking about? A lot of people blame the 1980s farm crisis on the January of 1980 grain embargo that President Jimmy Carter put in place on the Soviet Union. The idea was we were going to starve them into submission. You couldn't live without our grain, Soviet Union, so we're just going to not sell it to you. So, of course, it took away a customer of American agriculture. What happened? Well, they ramped up their own production, and other countries ramped up their production to fill the Soviet demand. What did it really do? It put more global supply on the market, and it took away American demand. Did not work. Did it create the 80s crisis? No, it did not. I'm going to tell you what I think the 80s farm crisis started with and make some comparisons to today. First off, oversupply. The 1970s were amazing. There was economic expansion around the world, and Earl Butz, Secretary of Agriculture, good Purdue man, but gave some bad advice. He told the American farmers, plant from fence row to fence row. They will starve without us. Feed the world, feed the world. There's never going to be an end to this demand. Well, that wasn't true, because American farmers did what they always do. They went out and produced like crazy and made copious amounts of product. It was good for the 70s. Oh man, we had corn, beans, and Florida farmers. In Indiana, you could just work a few months and go and retire the rest of the year. Anyway, that came to a screeching halt. It was not because of the grain embargo. The grain embargo was nothing more than a spark that set the embers on fire, the embers of oversupply. What were the other problems in the 1980s? We were over-levered. When things continue to go up, you think it will never end. Remember the dot-coms of the late 90s, early 2000s? Oh, yeah. So that's what was going on. We had farms that were 80 to 90% loan-to-equity ratios. Their cash flow wasn't really adequate to cover all of their debt service, and they got upside down in a hurry, especially at 18% interest rates. Are we there now? We're not over-leveraged in the Farm Belt like we were in the 80s. We are not dealing with 18 to 21% interest rates. We're around 8% interest rates. Still high compared to a few years ago, but historically about average, about normal, if you will. So my concern, what if this trade war escalation, these tariffs, are nothing more than the 2025 version of the grain embargo? It's going to cascade into an all-out incendiary conflagration, if you will, but it's not because of this trade war. It's because of the underlying embers, the fuel, if you will. Oversupply, demand stagnant, and then obviously global unrest that what it ends up doing is creating more supply, because countries that then are fighting say, we're going to go ahead and just create our own supply over here. So it actually creates more global supply, demand remains stagnant, and all of a sudden here we sit as American agriculture. Asking the question, is the 2025 tariff spat and trade war escalation the current version of the 1980 grain embargo? Let's hope not. Damian Mason, the business of agriculture.